Going on? Welcome in the Matt Bernier Show on DRF TV, live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Forums Twitter handle at DRF Inside Post, or the Daily Racing Forums Facebook page. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. This is the preview edition, taking a look at some racing from this upcoming weekend, December the 22nd. Also take a look at 3 NFL games coming up this weekend, the Week 16 NFL Trifecta. If you listen to this thing in podcast form, like most of you do, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. If you're over on iTunes, write us a review, give us a positive rating. And then I say iTunes, it could be Apple Podcasts, it can be wherever you get your podcasts. If you're over on YouTube, click that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. You'll get everything that DRF TV has to offer. As long as that little bell icon, as long as there's not a line through it, you'll get it all. We'll send it to you right there on your little homepage. It's a nice little feature. Make sure you got that. Again, questions, comments, concerns for me on Twitter, at Bernier_Matt, or beneath that video player on the YouTube channel. Recent weeks in this preview, I've been going through and I've been doing a dive into one race in particular and showing you formulator and replays and X, Y, and Z. I will continue doing that once we get back from the holiday, but this is basically my last piece going out before the holiday break for myself, and I won't be back until after New Year's. So this was also going to kind of double as, call it the de facto Weekend Warrior video that I usually do with Mike Watchmaker, DRF's National Handicapper. Watch is also off. And rather than do the deep dive into one race in particular, I figured, you know what? This is basically going to be the video version of the Weekend Warrior, and then we'll throw in some football at the end of it. So I'm going to just rip through the 3 races that I wrote about for this. You can find the entire column, the entire write-up, over on drf.com or in the form on Saturday, I believe. I would imagine that's when it'll be in. Went over the only graded stakes race of the weekend, the Mr. Prospector, as well as 2 races from down at Fairgrounds on Saturday. Fairgrounds got a really nice card put together. Got some solid horses that are going to be running, and in theory, they're preps for some of those bigger graded stakes races once we turn the calendar over into 2019. So let's kick things off with the 10th race at Gulfstream, the Grade 3 Mr. Prospector, 7/8 on the main track. The story to me about this race is, do you believe that Coal Front is just simply that much better than everyone else? Because if you do, in many ways, he could be a single in here, and if you're like me, of the opinion that I don't love him in here, I don't think he is a superstar by any stretch, I'm going to be looking for an alternative. Coal Front, if he runs back to his Gallant Bob, if he runs back to his Amsterdam, he's going to win this race. But his Bold Ruler, I know the fractions were red and fast, according to Timeform US, and that was his first start in, 13 months? There's just a part of me that looks at it and says, I'm just not sold on him at a short price. I know it's Pletcher. I know it's Gulfstream. He can win this race. I don't want to touch him in the 10-foot pole. The obvious sort of alternatives, you've got Wild Shot. You've got Heartwood. Wild Shot's a nice horse, don't get me wrong. But he's really never been all that fast to begin with. Heartwood, I have major questions about the distance. I think he's going to be better at shorter as opposed to 7/8. Conquest Big E, he had done some good things down at Gulfstream over the past year or so. His recent form, though, is just putrid, really bad. And I know he won that most recent start, but just in relatively slow time, whether you look at it from a buyer standpoint or from a Timeform standpoint. So it led me to kind of search around a little bit, and this horse is not the likeliest winners, but I do think Storm Advisory is interesting at what should be a square price. He exits the Grade 1 Clark Handicap going 2 turns. That's not his game. That's not what he wants to do. And those horses, say what we want about that field as a whole. The Clark, probably not a great group. Better than this group, though. Turning back to 7/8 of a mile. This is going to be beneficial for him. He's 3 for 9 overall at this distance in the past. And I like his sprint races recently. I mean, 2 and 3 starts back. Those are a couple of open-length victories. I know one was at Thistledown, and I know one was at Churchill in an N3X, but he did it all the right way, went off. I like the fact that he's got a little bit of versatility. And really, for me, it was more a matter of go back to his runs at Churchill back in June. You had the one in the N3X where he ran into American Anthem. And again, I know what you say about American Anthem, but if he were at his best in a race like this, he would be probably the favorite. That 99 buyer and the 119 raw Timeform rating, those are fast enough to win in here. Then he comes back in that Kelly's Landing, and CZ Rocket freaked out that day, but I thought he ran just fine. He earned a 95 and a 120 raw Timeform rating. So to me, if he can run one of those races, or even get back to a more comparable effort to what we had 2 and 3 starts back, I think Storm Advisory is a little bit interesting in here for Luch and company. I went with him in the Grade 3 Mr. Prospector. Now, we go down to the Fairgrounds. The 2 races that I chose to take a look at, of all the stakes action, were the 8th and 9th races, the Blushing KD as well as the Tenacious. The Blushing KD really is a pretty salty race on paper. You've got a number of horses that are competitive and comparable as far as speed figures are concerned. But to me, it really boiled down to the pace dynamic of this race. When you look at some of your key contenders, down on the inside, Prado's Sweet Ride has a little bit of versatility, but more often than not, she likes to be forwardly placed. I'm Betty G. You know what her best game is. It's when she's out there on the front, kind of winging and dinging it. You look at a horse like the 5, 19th Street. This is a stretch-out sprinter going from the dirt to the turf. You can't help but think that this one is going to be just sent out of there. The likelihood of this one taking back, I'd be stunned if they chose to go that route. You look at Take These Chains, who I think is going to be the favorite when it's all said and done for Brad Cox. She does her best, and I know she has come from off of it in the past, but she does her best when she is forwardly placed. I think she's going to be up there and taking some heat as well. And then the outside superiority complex. It's a tough outside draw. Her best race was that most recent one where she went right out there. And I know she doesn't have to have the lead. She showed that in that race at Arlington 4 starts back. But based on that most recent run, it makes you think, well, if that's how she earned her best fig, I'd imagine they're going to try to use her a little bit. I think it could set up for one of my favorites. She's been one of my favorites for a long time. Bo Recall. Now, Bo Recall has never really improved since early on in her 3-year-old campaign to this point now where she's a week away from being a 5-year-old mare. She makes her first start for Brad Cox here since she's been over here in the United States. She's been with Simon Callahan in Southern California for the duration, actually. This distance, I think, is going to hit her right between the eyes. She's always had a very strong late turn of foot. The problem for her, I think, has always been a combination of perhaps she's been in a little bit too tough, and I know it's not saying much in Southern California, but perhaps she's been in a little bit too tough. And also, I think on those turf courses out there, it's maybe a little bit more difficult for a horse like this who is let's call her a B as far as a finisher is concerned. If we're looking at a horse like Off Limits as an A finisher, a horse like Bo Recall is probably more on the sort of a B. She's certainly a notch below. But when you go down to a track like this at the fairgrounds where the competition is slightly weaker, and your main competition is Take These Chains, who is comes from the same trainer, Brad Cox, and again, go against Cox, we're at that point, at your own risk. I just feel like perhaps the pace is going to set up for Bo Recall, maybe getting into a new barn will help her, and maybe getting into a new area, getting down into Louisiana will go a long way for her. Bo Recall, she's 9-2 on the morning line. I think it's a very fair price. I'm going to go with her in the Blush and KD, the 8th at the fairgrounds. Then we move on to the 9th race. This is the 3rd race for the Weekend Warrior this week. It's the Tenacious at 1 mile and 70 yards. Now, there's a horse in here that's going to be an overwhelming favorite, and deservedly so. That's the 7 Tom's d'Etat. Tom's d'Etat goes out for Al Stall Jr. This is a horse that his 3 most recent runs, he has won by 7 1/4, 9, and 2 1/4 lengths. Combined, I think it ended up being 18 1/2 lengths. This is a very, very talented horse. The problem is, he just can't stay healthy. He is a soon-to-be 6-year-old. He's making his 9th lifetime start here. The good news is, obviously, he's fast and talented. He likes the fairgrounds. He's 1 for 1 overall. The distance shouldn't be an issue, but I think he might even be better with more distance. This is going to be an interesting spot, ultimately, because if he does what he's supposed to do, you would venture, take a guess that perhaps you end up in a race like the Mine Shaft. I don't think it's totally out of the question. And I don't know. I haven't read anything about this. I don't think it's totally out of the question that if this horse runs really well here on Saturday, perhaps if someone has one of those stalls for the Pegasus, maybe they go calling up these connections and say, hey, you've only got a handful of shots, clearly because he can't stay healthy. Get him while he's in reasonable form and reasonable health and try to just fire away while he's good. He's going to be a handful in here. He's 9-5 in the morning line. He's going to be considerably shorter than that. I think he's going to be in that 3-5, 4-5 range. Look, I'm picking against him. I think Snapper Sinclair is interesting enough. I can understand anyone that says if they all run their race, no one's going to beat Tom's d'Etat. If that's the case, perhaps Snapper Sinclair is one that you at least want to use underneath. Now, going to get a little bit of a weight break for Asmussen here. I have long maintained that this horse is going to be better going shorter, going 1 turn, 7/8, 1 turn mile, that kind of thing. He came back in that race at Keeneland, draw a line through that. It was over yielding turf. It was a means to an end. They stretch him out to 1 mile and a 16th. I thought he ran a credible race there that day. Timeform really liked that race, gave him a raw 119 Timeform rating. The winner that day, he was 1 1/4 lengths behind Lone Rock. Lone Rock came back and won a stakes race at Remington just last weekend with a 95 buyer. So the form of that race has held up. I would imagine Snapper Sinclair takes another step forward here slightly. He's run well at the fairgrounds in the past. I do maintain that I think he's going to be better going shorter when it's all said and done. But if you're looking for an alternative to the heavy favorite in here. Perhaps this is the horse. I think this is about as far as he wants to go. And I'm telling you, I'm champing at the bit when they finally do turn him back. Get him turned back to, I'm off the top of my head, whether it is a race like the Met Mile down the road, whether it's a race like the Churchill Downs on the Derby undercard at 7/8 of a mile. I think this horse has ability. I think he's going at distances that are just a slight bit too far for him. This one, I think he'll be, if he can't get a mile 70, he certainly needs a turn back. I think this is going to be a decent enough spot where he should offer a price, and perhaps he's a logical alternative outside of Tom's d'Etat. Certainly the horse to beat is that horse for Alstall, but this one, Snapper Sinclair for Asmussen, Ricardo Santana with the mount. I'll take a little bit of a shot here. If nothing else, play him to win, play a little bit of a safer exacta with him underneath. He's 8-1 on the morning line. So there was just kind of a quick recap of the Weekend Warrior column. You can find the whole column with a little bit more nuts and bolts over on drf.com or in the racing form on Saturday. So now that the races are out of the way, and by the way, there's going to be plenty more stakes previews that you can find. You can listen to Out of the Gate, all that kind of stuff. Video.drf.com, the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel, or you can find most of this stuff over on iTunes as well. We're going to take a quick transition, and we'll go right over to the Week 16 NFL Trifecta, trying to get back on track after a 1-2 week last weekend. Quick rip through of the NFL Week 16 Trifecta, 28-17-0 year to date, 1-2 last weekend, hopefully righting the ship here a little bit. We've only got 2 weeks of this left. We've got this week and next week. Like I said at the top, there won't be a preview or a recap show next week because I'm off, but I will tweet out the picks again over at Bernier_Matt. But just giving you the heads up going forward, just once football season is finally buttoned up and done, doesn't mean that this kind of thing is going away. So probably end up transitioning into basketball, whether it's college, whether it's pro, whatever the case may be. And then for those of you that are unfamiliar, we just recently launched sports.drf.com. So you're going to be hearing more about that. You'll be seeing a little bit more about that as well. I don't want to give away all of the good, all the breaking news, but just be prepared. There are going to be more sports, especially in this preview show. The opening half will probably be going what I've done, breaking down a race, going through, checking out the tape, X, Y, and Z, using Formulator. Then the back half, once football is done, it'll be some sort of a sports betting sort of thing for the weekend, getting you ready to go. So anyway, 28-17-0 year-to-date with the NFL Trifecta. Here we go. We're going to just rip through them rapid fire. Been a nightmare about 10 days for the New England Patriots. They're at home. They are minus 13, laying 13 at home against the Buffalo Bills. All you need to know, the Pats now have no Josh Gordon. He's gone. There's rumor that Brady has a torn MCL. They scored 10 points on the road in Pittsburgh last weekend. Not that Buffalo is very good, but the key thing about Buffalo, Josh Allen has apparently just been a revelation as far as his legs are concerned, where he's very mobile and he can run. The Patriots have had problems with running and mobile quarterbacks all year. Look at Mitch Trubisky. Look at a couple of the other guys. It's been a bit of a problem. I think that could end up being an issue for them. I think the Patriots win this game. I don't think they cover. Give me the Bills plus 13 at Gillette on Sunday afternoon. Houston Texans at the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles laying 2.5 at home. Look, apparently Nick Foles just has the magic touch. I don't know what it is, but he comes in. They go into L.A. last weekend. They get the job done very impressively. Game was actually not nearly as close as the final score would suggest on Sunday night. This one here, Houston, I guess you have to believe in them a little bit more. I still am mildly reluctant here, but they have the 2 seed right now in the AFC. I think they lose this thing. I think the Eagles get the job done. I think they win by more than a field goal. I like the Eagles minus 2.5. And then the Bucks at the Cowboys. The Bucks are getting 7 points. I don't think Tampa is very good, but I don't know that Dallas is that good either. And on the heels of being shut out in Indianapolis, I'm sure they're going to be all fired up. They're going to want to score points. They need to win games now because if Philadelphia all of a sudden is a thing, that NFC East is not a slam dunk for Dallas. But at the same time, I feel like Tampa is that kind of team that can just be a little bit pesky. They can hang around a little bit longer than they probably should. It's a touchdown on the road. Give me the points. Give me Tampa plus 7. So a quick recap. Bills plus 13 at the Patriots. Eagles minus 2.5 home against the Texans. Buccaneers plus 6 on the road at the Cowboys. 28-17-0 year to date. Hopefully week 16 is a good one to us. A kind one anyway. There you have it. The NFL Trifecta for week 16. 2 more weeks in the regular season and then the playoffs begin. If you've been listening to this live, thank you for doing so. Live.drf.com, livestream.com, Daily Racing Forms Twitter handle @DRF Inside Post, or the Daily Racing Forms Facebook page. If you listen to this in podcasts, like most of you do, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. If you're over on YouTube, click that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. If you're over on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, however you get your podcasts, Write us a review, give us a positive rating. Questions, comments, concerns beneath the video player on YouTube or at me on Twitter, at Bernier_Matt. As I said, this is it for me. There will be no recap on Monday. There will be no preview next week. Enjoy the holidays. I will be back after the new year has sprung. I believe it'll be, I don't know if it's January. It's probably going to be January 2nd that I'll be back. So by then I'll have to figure out how the recap is going to go and what that week's shows are going to look like, because it'll be a short week anyway. But at the end of the day, have a happy, safe, healthy holiday. Good luck from here on out. I'm going to get out of here. You go enjoy the latest edition of Out of the Gate. We'll talk again after we turn the calendar over to 2019. Good luck. This has been the preview edition of the Matt Bernier Show.